Hello, welcome everybody to the second episode of Into the Void podcast. I'm here with a very special guest. He's an amazing photographer and a very big outdoors person. Here he is, Harrison Coley. How are you, my man?
Hi, I'm doing all right. And yourself?
I'm doing great. I just got back from a trip from Utah, so.
That's awesome. How was Utah?
Dude, it was really awesome. I went out there especially with this whole virus going on, I just needed to get out of the house.
Oh, honestly, yeah, vacation is well needed right now. I can understand that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was just like, I need to get away from my parents. I need to just go off, drive. I went with a couple of friends out, a little bit out of state, but it was awesome. It was really awesome. But anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to join. I know we've been scheduling this for a while and it's been off and on, but finally we get this going.
I'm excited to be here, man. I'm happy. Yeah. I'm happy our schedules finally lined up and we could get the call in.
Absolutely. So I know you have your own business in photography, which is you're 19, right?
Yes, sir, I am.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's awesome. You have a business. What do you do?
So I started out with photography. I've always been an entrepreneurial mind. I started some businesses when I was younger, doing like lemonade stand and like magic tricks, that type of stuff. So a lot of like street performance. Then I went into restaurants, did about 5 years in restaurants. That taught me a lot of like social skills, but I absolutely hated being told what to do. So I already kind of knew that I wanted to go the self-employed route. Yeah, and so one of my neighbors growing up was a professional photographer. He's actually been a professional photographer for about 45 years now. So he's like lifetime career.
Okay.
And yeah, so I ended up reaching out to him. I had kind of helped him out when I was younger, when we were neighbors. He ended up moving. We ended up moving as well. But so I reached out to him and we ended up getting together, and he taught me a bit of, his tricks of the trades, what he does in the industry. I ended up helping him out with a few different photo shoots. He does mostly like architectural stuff for like real estate and hotels. So he took me out to some pretty magnificent estates. We ended up shooting like a $50 million ranch. And I mean, those experiences really, really helped me kick off my career.
Oh, absolutely.
I got to see, like the industry standard from like a very high professional point. Yeah, so it taught me a lot. And then, I'd already been interested on the business side, so I started finding my own independent gigs. I started out with like portraiture photography, shooting like high school, senior photos and like couple photos. And luckily for me, my mom's a real estate agent.
Your dad owns his own business, right?
So my dad does some property management, and then my mom's got a few different businesses going on as well. So I kind of grew up in an entrepreneurial family.
Oh, absolutely.
Which was absolutely awesome. And then with my mom being a realtor, she kind of gave me the opportunity to have some experience shooting the real estate without this mentor. So that's kind of where I got like my commercial photography training, is through my mom and this mentor. And now I'm doing a lot more independent gigs. I'm shooting for some hotels. I'm doing some other realtors for real estate. So doing what I can. I mean, I'm 19 years old, and with like the COVID stuff going on, it's kind of hard to get business, like especially doing walk-ins.
Oh, absolutely, man. Well, with stuff kind of opening up now, you probably got some people going on.
Oh yeah, and right now like things are just starting to move again, so it's good. Like I've been, going out, dropping out my business cards, emailing a bunch of people, contacting old clients, seeing what I can get to come back up. So that's good. I mean, it's exciting. I absolutely love what I get to do. I'm stepping into like more videography work, so I've been shooting some short films for some people as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's been a lot of fun. I'm actually working with a world-renowned juggler right now. His name is Peter Irish. So we're shooting some juggling stuff.
Yeah, and you edit it all and put some dope-ass music and do like some awesome shots.
Oh yeah, yep.
Dude,
and crazy. So it's going to be pretty raw edits. Mostly just leave it up to the camera work and the juggle tricks to keep it, not too confusing. So I'm taking on some video projects as well. But business is good. I mean, it's hard being 19 and like having to choose when to work and when not to, because as we all like to procrastinate.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a trick, but I mean, at the same time, I've started to make it work. I mean, at first, a lot of my issues were just with my own discipline about like actually getting to work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I had to kind of set some like guidelines for myself to follow. Started to get into a routine, and now business is smoothing a lot more, or business is flowing a lot more smoothly.
Oh yeah.
So that's really good. It's exciting.
Yeah. Would you say like working as your own boss is like a way better experience?
It's definitely really healthy. I mean, I would say don't do it unless you want a challenge,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean it's definitely challenging. There's a lot of points where you think you're gonna fail. I mean, it's like stepping into the void, right? Like you're
Yeah.
walking in the unknown. You don't really know where you're going, but that's also like really exciting to me because it's kind of like I get to choose which direction I'm heading in. The big thing about like being your own boss is you have to force yourself to educate, you know, because there isn't any like required trainings for anything, so you actually have to or pick and choose what you want to study and what you want to learn about. So that's good, but it's also a challenge. I mean, I absolutely love it. I don't want one else again. I mean, I do, like technically I'm working for clients, but being my own
Yeah.
boss is incredible. Like making my own hours, like the freedom of schedule is insane. So that's really nice.
Yeah. It takes a lot off your shoulders to do that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
That's like some crazy motivation you have to have.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it's a lot. Like to work a 40 to 60 hour work week with nobody setting your schedule is definitely it's difficult because I mean, like a lot of the time you sit down to work and it's like fuck, I just want to watch YouTube.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I swear? By the way,
No,
my
no,
bad.
it's all good. It's
All right,
all good. Yeah.
I'll try not to.
No, it's all good. It right now it's like whatever right now. I just can't say we can't say the C word.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
because there's a whole bunch of stuff. I said that in one of my other podcasts, and it got taken down because of it.
oh wow.
Yeah, so I
Wow.
don't know why you can't say the C word, even though it's so prevalent.
Yeah, especially in like European countries. I mean, that's an adjective to them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
It's like the word only has the power we choose to give it, right?
yeah. Oh,
It's
speaking
just
about
messed up.
Europe and stuff like that, you went to Scotland, right? We talked about that a
Yeah,
little bit. Yeah, talk about that.
yeah. So I went to Scotland in March this year, and that was my very first international experience. So that was my first time leaving the United States, other than for Canada. For those of you who don't know, I'm a dual citizen, so I'm half Canadian,
Oh,
half
you do.
American.
You do have dual
Yeah,
citizenship. I had no idea.
yeah, yeah. Hard flex on the two passports there. But yeah, so we go up to visit my mother's grandparents in Canada semi-frequently. So I've been up there, but this was my first time going overseas in Scotland. I mean, it was such an enlightening experience. Like to see it was a big perspective shift to like see the different communities, and like a lot of the culture is definitely the same. Like I noticed a lot of like social tendencies are very
Hmm.
similar. People are definitely a lot more like agreeable there. Like they're more willing to listen to people. Um, my issue with Scotland, I saw a lot of trash and a lot of drug issues.
Oh
We were only
wow.
there for a short period of time, but I definitely all right. But yeah, so there's definitely a lot of like I just saw like needles on the ground, and like a lot of the people, as I noticed here too, just kind of looked like they might have been strung out. And not to be like derogatory towards the people or like
No,
make
absolutely.
generalization of the population, but I saw that it was we were in cities, so I saw that a bit more than I saw it at my own hometown. But it's also a
Oh
smaller
yeah.
town, so might have something to do with it. But I definitely noticed a lot of that. And then there's some litter on the side of the street, but I mean that's I think everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I mean, it was incredible. Like the history there, and just, I mean, oh my God, it was incredible. I've never eaten in a restaurant that was 500 years old before, so that was.
You get like a totally well, especially even where we live. He lives about for all the audience. He lives a little bit distance away from me, like 30 minutes about. And we live in like a small community, so we don't get to see a
Yeah,
lot of outside, influences.
yeah,
So
it's very sheltered here.
exactly. So going out to those places really changes your perspective. It's
Oh
insane.
yeah, it was incredible. And just like seeing all the history. I mean, touring the castles, going to the old restaurants, and like that was magical to me. because I mean, there's not a lot of history here in Colorado. I mean, there's some good history for, a few hundred years, but the history over there is just, it's on a whole other level. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
and it's so well recorded. I mean, of course, there's gaps in history, but it was fascinating to me. I spent so much time just reading the signs and asking the museum curators. I was very curious while I was over there.
Yeah, it's crazy. You were talking to me the other day, like there was like a language type barrier over there that you were experiencing.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was tricky because, like, I mean, the Scottish people do speak English, but it's very different than my accent, my native accent. So it was a little hard to understand. I mean, there's especially, like, I went out to the bars, and when people were drinking, I just could not understand them. So I was asking people to repeat themselves, two, three, four times before I could finally, like, register what they were saying, which was it was frustrating, because, like, I knew we were speaking the same language. And when I asked them, I was asking them about the accent thing, and they said my words were perfectly clear. So it was tricky because they could understand me, but it felt like I could barely understand them.
Yeah, no, there's a huge because even when I was out in Spain, when I went there to with the host family, I was talking to people, and even the people that spoke English, it was like very because when you go to another country and you would expect a lot of people to speak like very good English, and I went over to Spain, and it's like only some like places spoke English, and it was so weird for me, like because I was just like, well, you come from a country where the main language is English. Everybody speaks English.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. It's like, and was it really hard to communicate with people there?
No, it was like, well, I took a Spanish class, so we would wake up in the morning, and then from the host family, I was with this girl from it wasn't Belgium, I think. I'm not sure. I can't remember. It's been a while, but we would hop on the train and go in and take Spanish classes. And usually in America, like Spanish classes, and you would know this, but like when you're in high school or whatever, they would usually speak a lot of English, and then they would mix Spanish in there.
Yeah.
And then once you got into the higher classes, it was like, okay, now you're only speaking Spanish, but that was not till like Spanish, like, I don't know, 3 or 4.
Yeah,
So
the more advanced levels, for sure.
yeah, so like over there, I was like in a pretty beginner, like I know how to like form sentences and have a small discussion with people, but over there they don't speak English whatsoever. Like I was in the Spanish class, and they would say like they could understand what I was saying, even the Spanish teacher, but she would be like she would only speak Spanish towards me. So
Wow.
it was like a total.
That must have been kind of difficult when you were, like, confused or you couldn't understand something.
Yeah, well, and especially I was the only American. Like
Wow.
I couldn't find another American in that city because I went into a place called Bilbao, which is kind of near the border of France, not really, but it's close. And like Madrid and Barcelona are the two places you usually would go in
In
Spain.
Spain, yeah.
Yeah, and you see a lot of American tourism there and like American influence. And so over there, there's not really, I wouldn't say there's not, like, not probably there was Americans, but I couldn't really find any other Americans. So when you go to another country and you say you're American, you get this like look, and especially during these times,
Oh,
with
yeah.
these protests and stuff like that, definitely countries have an outlook on us of like, being very loud.
Yeah,
Um,
we definitely are loud.
Yeah, exactly. And even if you look at like American vloggers and stuff going to other countries, they're very like prominent out there. So they like make a mark, especially with like
Yeah.
Logan Paul and shit like that. You see them going off to like Japan, and they make it very well known that they're there. So
Yep.
everybody, yeah, even everybody gave me this look, and this German lady said, he seems very out of it, to my grandma that was there with me.
Wow.
She wasn't staying with me, she was in another place, but I went with her. And
That's awesome.
yeah, so I was just like, I think I would rather stay with the host family, because you know, I want to experience this by like me as a person, you know.
Yeah, and like the culture, you know, you really get to immerse yourself when you stay with a family.
Exactly. And then when you go out, so they would not really give it like a shit about like going out and doing whatever. You just have to be home by a certain time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so you just go out and explore the city. But yeah, there was definitely like a big gap between like, I realized like culture over there, because everything's so smushed together, like country wise, is that you see people all around the world come there, and it's like, what the fuck?
It is kind of trippy. I actually noticed the same thing in Scotland. With there was a ton of Asian tourism.
Yeah, it's so weird.
It was definitely, because, well, and I mean, it kind of makes sense, because like America and Asia / China are kind of like the industrial capitals. So it kind of makes sense that these people are vacationing more. But it was just really interesting for me to see there was a lot of Asian influence where I was in Scotland, which was actually quite fascinating to me.
Yeah, that's crazy. That you don't realize the perspective of how much like tourism there is in that country and the amount of people, because you think like, oh, America's like the mixing pot of things, but you don't really experience a lot of their cultures here. I mean, you could if you go to certain parts of America where it's like
the niche places.
Yeah, if you especially go down to like southern areas or certain parts of deserts. There's like, because I was out in Utah, and there's like a huge Ute tribe out there that I had no idea, because I've been going out to Moab for years. So it's like a whole different, like, it's really cool to see like still Native American people are like still at it.
Yeah, on their land.
Yeah, with like and participating in like their past culture and certain religions.
That's awesome. Celebrating their history and stuff. Wow.
Yeah. So that was awesome. But traveling, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, traveling's awesome. So when you were in Balboa, it was
Bilbao.
Did you notice any French influence because you were closer to the French border?
That was the thing, is when I went out to this beach, that was pretty much, if you went like, I don't even know, like a couple miles, like obviously it's like this peninsula that you go up to, and then Normandy is like, if you go like pretty much straight along the border. I don't know how to explain it, because I can't really like depict the country and where
without
you go.
A map,
without a map or a description. But it's pretty much, if you're looking at Spain, which is like the north side of the Atlantic Ocean, and then you kind of go on the border of France, and then there. But I didn't see, like, there were French people, but I didn't see a lot of them in my class, because French, English, and Spanish are the three languages that are really easy for those people to learn. Like, if you're French, it's really easy to learn Spanish, or if you're English, it's really easy to learn French or Spanish, you know? Compared to like learning Mandarin or Japanese or Russian, you know?
Absolutely.
It's a whole different
it's like a different ballgame.
Exactly. So but I was surprised not to see as much as I would notice. But definitely, if I were to go to Madrid or Barcelona, I feel like it would be way different.
Yeah, a lot more pronounced on like the impact from other cultures.
Exactly, because it's just, because I want that's the thing, and I think you can kind of agree. I like to go to places that are not heavily. That's why I decided to go to Bilbao, is because it doesn't have heavy tourism as other countries, as other cities in countries, big cities.
So do you personally view the, you know, mass tourism and like almost the gentrification of different communities? Do you think that's kind of a negative thing when large amounts of different cultures are visiting a micro community, and it kind of shifts the culture of that area?
Dude, absolutely. I think like with cultures, especially in like America, or if you go anywhere else, I think like tourism is a big thing. If you look at like, I don't know, like I'm gonna give Moab as an example that I went out to. It's in Utah, and that's like it's a great place, but I've been going there for, I don't even know how long, but I've been going ever since I was a little baby, because it's fucking, you can do so much mountain biking. And have you gone out to Moab? Because I know you're really big. Yeah, I know you're really
have been going out there since I was a kid. I mean, Moab is just a magical place.
Oh, dude, it's so crazy because it's just out there. I gotta show you some of the pictures. I'll send you some of them. They're awesome. But
I love that.
yeah, I just went out with some friends, and I look back at it when I was a kid, and it has been so like the tourism there has expanded so much. There's like hotels that were never there. I was going there, and they're actually making 4 lanes there.
Wow, really?
Yeah, they're making 4 lanes throughout the town, and I was just like, what the fuck? Like,
That's crazy.
Yeah, I was so surprised because in hotels that I never saw there, because it was very like, it just reminded me of being stuck in this time period for so long. And now that like tourism, because if you asked anybody, like, I don't even know, like a decade ago, like in early 2010, they said Moab, you know, they might know it, but it wasn't like in your face, like, oh yeah, I know Moab, like Arches National Park and shit.
Yeah, well, and now it's like almost a destination, you know. It's like it's a global retreat.
Exactly. And you're like, and you would be like, oh no, I don't know that place, but now everybody knows it, you know. So it's
Absolutely.
like, and that's what I think is that, like, you know, going to countries, especially like in like Croatia, there's a lot of places there that haven't been really big, like a lot of tourism, especially like if you go to Hawaii, which I'm part Hawaiian, so I know that place pretty well. I usually go out to Maui, but out towards like Honolulu, the main island, and Maui, it's like over the years it's been because it's gone so expensive. You could have gotten a house out there, a decent house for like $500,000. You know, where we live, it's like that's like a shitty apartment.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. So you usually have to go to the down valley parts to to get like cheaper. But like there, you could have gotten a house there, and now it's like in the millions, you know, because it's just it's so hard because so many people want to live there. You know, it's on the beach, it's really beautiful, but tourism really impacts like the native, you know, culture, and like, you know, and it destroys a lot of the land, you know, especially with this COVID. It like took out a lot of that, because even here where we have big tourism, you know, you don't see as many people, which is a good thing, you know, so you can have the land kind of regrow, you know, it's not as busy all the time, you know, you don't see all the idiots.
I agree.
Yeah.
But it's a tricky thing, because it's like, it's especially for people in the city, like I think there's an innate human need to connect with nature. And for some people it's through the desert, some people it's through, you know, beaches and oceans. But it's just fascinating to me that we don't respect these places. I mean, we have this need to go explore and adventure and see new things, especially in nature. But then we have this, you know, gap where we litter or we destroy the trails, and we just kind of abuse it. You build these giant hotels, build these giant highways, and it kind of just turns into the city. It's just more of the same, and then we move on to the next destination. You know, it's like we just jump from destination to destination without respecting or preserving it.
Yeah, because it's such a weird concept to think about, is that like you see a place that once was, and then you see all this new shit built, and you're like, what the hell happened?
Yeah, and it's almost like saddening to me, because it's like I feel like we're kind of disintegrating ancient cultures. We're disintegrating, you know, national monuments and like historical sites. And we're watching us physically erode places faster than ever before because of the tourism and all this going on with like losing the cultures. It's really like frightening to me, because I want to preserve it all.
No, absolutely, like
slipping between our fingers.
Yeah, I know. It's very hard to see, but I mean, then the people will say it's because of economy, you know. You have to like, you know, tourism is like, especially here, you know, is like it's what makes a lot of the money. It's like almost 80%, you know, is tourism and how people make their money.
Well, it's like people got to eat, right? Like
exactly.
We got to survive, so it's do what you have to, but it's almost like we're we're using our own personal needs and sacrificing the needs of like the earth.
Exactly.
It's just like, damn, it's very confusing to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sad, but I kind of want to go back into, so I know you give a lot of, I was looking at on your Instagram and the videos you give, and you do a lot of, especially on your Snapchat and stuff like that, you give a lot of motivational stuff, and it's kind of due to your past and learning stuff. So I kind of want to go into that. Is that like, what was some of the circumstances that changed, your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So I fell into addiction at a pretty young age. I actually started smoking at 11 years old. Fell into a pretty negative group. I was around a lot of negative influences. I was hanging out with a bunch of homeless. Just a lot of toxic behavior. I mean, I'm ignoring my schoolwork. And I was experiencing this duality of life because I was also a Boy Scout. I'm doing, volunteer projects and fundraisers. So I kind of got to see both sides of like, trashing people's cars and like running around in the middle of the night getting high versus like being responsible and organizing projects and helping the community. And I kind of felt this like rift inside of myself. I felt this hole, and it was like I really felt like I was hurting more than I was helping. So I ended up going on about 2.5-year journey to just like kind of clear my space. I ended up walking away from the majority of my friends, cut a lot of my old connections, and just went inward. I kind of observed my own habits and my thought process. I was in a pretty deep depression, a lot of suicidal thoughts, actually a few attempts. So I was in a really dark space, but I knew I could come out of it. And so I worked and I tried to find all the tools that I could. I ended up finding a lot of motivation through meditation and exercise. And just a lot of, general inflection, like doing a lot of reading and just silent sitting with myself, trying to accept who I am. And so that has all really filled me with a sense of love, a sense of purpose for life. And I feel a very deep need to share that. And I think that's tied into that community service and the stuff I did when I was younger. But I really feel a need to serve. And for me, I feel like a lot of that is expressed through these motivational posts and, just helping other people as much as I can. Because, we all walk a different path, but I believe we are all meant to find happiness and, acceptance of ourselves. So I've been trying to spread that love as much as I can.
Yeah, and that's awesome because even you have that hike behind your house, and you've been picking up trash and stuff like that along the way, which is is that we have the concept in our minds, or a lot of people tell us, one piece of trash, just pick it up off the ground, and it's like it will do the bigger, it will solve a bigger problem even by one piece of trash, but totally and you go out and you actually like do that stuff. And I like, even when I was in Moab, going along hikes and stuff like that, because right now it was like the perfect time. Arches was free to get into, so we didn't have to pay, but that idea kind of made me like, okay, if I see trash, I'll pick it up.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and definitely you got that concept into my mind to be like, always look out for the community, because it's not always, if we keep doing it, it won't be here.
Yeah, exactly. Like if we continue with the behaviors and the habits we have as a generalized population, I see it as kind of a negative trend. I see a large amount of our behaviors are very destructive. But in my personal experience, and just kind of how you're talking on that, like this love and like this sense of need to share with others, and like this responsibility to pick shit up when I see it, and like kind of just keep myself moving. It grows the more I help other people, and I find it growing within other people too. So it's very exciting because it almost feels like a wildfire is like igniting within us, and it's just this sense of love and responsibility, both for the world to clean it up. And I think there's a huge ripple just by picking up the trash. I mean, if every single person picked up all the trash they saw, there wouldn't be any trash.
Exactly.
And it's just a small step. I mean, is it going to solve all the problems of the world? Absolutely not. But is it going to solve that problem? Absolutely.
Yeah, in the bigger cause of everything. It's kind of like
well, and I think that sense of responsibility, and I mean, I think taking that first step of action and just picking up the trash when you see it kind of ignites that responsibility that then turns into other things like volunteer projects or organizing your community, becoming a speaker. So I really have seen that as like, it's like the kindling to a fire. It's the small piece, and although it's just a small piece, you absolutely need it to build a big and large fire. So I think it's a great thing to start with. I think it's an actionable step that we can all take. So it's really, I mean, I find it really happening. Nobody's telling me great job, but it's like, I mean, I've been doing this for about 2 months and I've picked up trash bags, loads of trash. I mean, I'd say probably 200 or 300 pounds worth of trash just off of trips.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, that's not a boast or anything. It's more like, it's scary. I mean, it's like, wow, but it's the impact you can have just doing a little bit over a long period of time is far more significant than we realize.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things is like, even though nobody's watching, you still do it for the bigger cause.
Totally. Yeah. I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
And I really think it adds up too. I really think the more you do it, I think it's hugely beneficial.
Yeah. So in that 2 year period, what was some of the things to help you? Like, did you do anything different in your daily habits to kind of change that transition?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be unique for everybody. But a lot of my lowest points, I came out of really because of my friends and my community, those that I really trust. They're, hey, I'm worried about you, or you're doing great. Just stay positive. Keep doing what you're doing. You're on the right path. I mean, that encouragement, that gentle nudge really helped.
Yeah.
One of the actually most influential things on me was just about a year ago, I started calling this guy. So last summer I was in Canada for my grandfather's funeral.
Okay.
And so I'm up in Canada and I'm getting a ride back to the airport at 4 a.m. And my Uber driver driving me to the airport 4 a.m, him and I had this incredible discussion about habits and just tendencies and behaviors and becoming, being observant of yourself while not beating yourself up for those actions. And so I asked him while we were in the car, I was like, I'd love to get your contact information and I'd love to, do a call with you every week, very like a coaching call or like a counselor. And since I had no ties to this guy, I had no need to, prove myself to him. I didn't know him. I wasn't connected to this man. I didn't have anything to, stress about. So I was able to kind of disconnect from my ego and be honest with him.
Yeah.
And so through that, like I was able to really open up to him about where I was, my habits. And he was very, very gentle. He was like, it's okay to do those things. It's okay to be an addict, or it's okay to feel like I had a big issue with lying for a while. And so he's like, just really observe it and feel how it makes you feel. Like really just look at how it makes you feel. But don't beat yourself up for it. Don't add further depression to your depression over just, doing these things. And so he really showed me a lot of acceptance, which allowed me to kind of move past these things. His big thing is I defined myself as a stoner for a very long time.
Yeah.
And he was like, you're not a stoner, but you have to love and accept the stoner piece of you to move past it and not let it consume you.
Yeah.
Because I was letting it consume me. I'm like, I'm a stoner. And it became like my daily reality was just getting high.
Yeah.
And so he's like, look, you got to accept that. He's like, you have to accept the fact that you enjoy that, but you also have to accept the responsibility and necessity to evolve, to grow up.
Yeah.
And so that was really, I mean, it hurt. It was really hard. It took me probably 6 months before I actually was confident in my ability to go sober. And because I didn't go to a rehab or anything. So I was kind of self-treating. So I had a lot of lapses back off of sobriety. But as I went, at first it was days, and then it was weeks, and then it was months sober, and it's just given me a lot of clarity. And he's been there to support me, which has been absolutely huge for me, because without him, I think I probably would have caved back into my old habits. And since I have him on like a weekly basis, and I just call him once a week, I kind of know, like, even if I dip for a few days in the week and I fall back into some habits, I kind of find myself cleaning up and getting back into like my center before I get back with him.
Yeah, do you still keep in contact with him?
Every single week.
Wow. That's crazy.
It's been really big. And I pay him for his time, not a lot, but I pay him what I can for his time. But having that accountability, having that
Absolutely.
person that like knows that you're trying to move forward and doesn't beat you for not moving forward, but just gently nudges you in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things for me, kind of, like helping with the time of like, because sophomore year was like my huge like addiction period into like drugs and stuff like that, because I was also with a not healthy group of friends. But after I broke them off, I had to figure out who I was as a person, and especially since this COVID thing is going on, I've done a lot of self-reflection, which I think a lot of people already have. But one of the biggest things was like meditation for me. Even though as cheesy as that sounds and as like hippie as it sounds, it's like it helped me through a time period of like, self-focusing on who I was as a person more than freaking out about everything, because I'm not like spiritual or anything, and I don't believe that like meditation is for everybody, because as much as everybody says like it's a thing that's going to help you and it's going to transition your life, but like sitting down for 5 minutes and like focusing on your breathing and accepting the thoughts that you have inside your head of like you were saying, like, I'm a stoner, or like, I have this bad group of friends, or I'm angry, or I'm sad, or I'm too anxious, or whatever those feelings might be. It's having that 5-minute time period to kind of focus on who you are as a person.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it's tricky because meditation has been labeled as this it almost has a negative connotation to it. I mean,
Exactly.
People expect it to be something where you're just a light fairy and you just kind of like go with whatever. And I don't really agree with that. I mean, I've seen and also experienced in my own reality. I find meditation to be a very like non-definable thing.
Exactly.
I mean, for me, a lot of the time it is just sitting down and just listening to my thoughts. Sometimes it's sitting down and listening to music really helps me, or being outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hikes, going on walks is just, I consider that meditation too. Even like
Exactly.
swimming or going down the river, just being like in nature without a lot of distractions. The big thing is like not indulging in like when we go out on the river, when people drink or when people are smoking, I find it to be more of like a leisurely thing. When you kind of go out onto the river and you just like, you're fishing or you're watching the nature and you're just soaking it all in, I think it becomes a very meditative experience.
Yeah, because what a lot of people tell you in meditation, or people who are not very well educated, because in that aspect of focusing on your mind is, especially with teachers nowadays, I know a lot of teachers in schools are doing meditations for classes and stuff like that, but the concept that they have is that it's like block out those thoughts from your head, and that's the wrong way to go about it, because the idea is that it's more of accepting those ideas into your mindset and taking time to focus on you, depending on if it's sitting down, if it's going on a walk. Because if you're going on a walk and fishing and stuff like that, it's like you're already in that moment of that I'm hiking or I'm fishing, and you're focusing on that and you're enjoying the moment, which is like, I would totally agree on the aspect of like, that's, nature is a very, very big aspect, I feel like, in meditation. Because if, unfortunately for the people who are out in cities and don't get really that time to go outside and be like, oh, this is so beautiful, when you see like Colossus towers, or or just no really nature around you. It's more industrial. Is that sitting down for 5 minutes is good, but like walking outside, there's a lot of distractions, and especially people who are having like stressful days and stuff like that. So it's very awesome that like the opportunities that we get to go outside and like experience that and just take the time to enjoy us as humans, as weird as that sounds, but it's like
it's totally, you're spot on. You're totally spot on. And it's interesting to me because I think you and I are both extremely privileged, not in the color of our skin or our gender, but I think we're privileged in the fact that we got to grow up in this nature. Where we are is, it's very untouched here, which is it's a magical thing. And see, for me, I think meditation is very much just a self-discovery through being present.
Exactly.
Sitting in the moment. And for me, I like to think of my thoughts like cars going down the highway. This is an analogy from the app Calm. But I like to think of my thoughts as the traffic, and I like to think of myself as just the observer on the side of the road. And it becomes very easy to detach yourself from whatever thought is in your head or whatever you're feeling when you kind of sit there and you take a few breaths and you realize, I'm just the observer. These things are things that the observer gets to experience, but the observer can also choose not to experience this.
You decide,
Yeah, that's really powerful to me. But I really, I strongly believe that the meditation is it's self-discovery through being present in whatever moment you're in.
Absolutely.
Whether it be, I find even sometimes when I'm doing my photo editing, when I'm just sitting at the computer for hours, just clicking through photos, I find myself kind of falling into my head and getting into almost a meditative trance where I'm the observer. I'm totally disconnected from my body or all these other things, and I really just feel connected to the earth and to my own observance, like not the thoughts. And it's kind of hard to put into words, but it's not your thoughts, it's you.
It's absolutely,
it's definitely a tricky thing. And it's also interesting because we're both young, and so it's like I cannot wait to experience how much more I can learn about myself just by sitting and being present over 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, because you get to experience you as a person, and then reflecting that on doing whatever you might do for, I wouldn't say relaxation, because meditation, that's why I say it's kind of not for everybody, but it is, because I'm talking about the sense of sitting down, because it took me a month to like sit down and be like, okay, just breathe, like relax, because you have those thoughts and people tell you don't let those thoughts come in, you have to focus on your breathing or whatever. And that's the thing with meditation being like universal in the way of going out in nature, experiencing, going on hikes, you could call that, and that's the universal expression of meditation.
I totally agree. It's my very first experience with a self-guided meditation was I was told to sit and just watch a candle, just watch the flame of a candle. And so I sat down and I watched this candle, and for the first month or 2 months of watching the candle, I could not think about the flame. And that was, my goal was to just focus on the flame. And for the longest time, I felt very ruled by my thoughts. I felt these thoughts coming into my head, and I'd get distracted, and I'd follow the thought down the thought's path, and I'm like, oh well, what would happen then, and what would that look like? And I think that's good to be able to explore that imagination side, but finding that self-control or that inner power to just detach from the thoughts and focus on whatever you choose to focus, I think that's very powerful. But I really like the thought of meditation just being sitting and letting be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, very amazing. Kind of going into the last subject. So when you're editing photos and doing that, how long is the process for you for any inspiring, like photographers, or what's the process of getting out there, editing, doing it like a daily schedule for you?
So for me, it's definitely different. Like it differs throughout the week. But I would say my usual photography process, like a standard project, usually takes me about 20 to 40 hours. So
Wow,
you like,
holy shit, really?
yeah, it's pretty big. And for like portrait shoots for like couples and doing people photography, it's definitely a lot less. It's closer to probably 7 to 15 hours. And so, I mean, it starts, of course, with like the initial contact, and I'll spend usually about an hour to 2 hours, like seeing what they want, what their vision for the project is, what side of themselves they want to display, what emotions they want involved. Talking a lot about like the scenery, or if it's, people, what kind of style of clothing they want. A lot of my commercial gigs, it's which rooms do we want to shoot? What angles do we need for the rooms? That type of stuff. And so usually it's about an hour or two of planning. The biggest thing that I learned from the professional photographer that I work with is taking your damn time. I mean, it's when you get to a very high level, it's almost painstaking. I mean, we would spend like 3 hours just taking one photo of a living room.
Wow. Holy shit.
Yeah, and it sounds excessive. It sounds like it's too much. But then you actually experience it, and you go through 3 hours of looking at the scene and going, take out that couch, or move that chair, or line up those two, coffee stands so they are symmetrical. You getting all of your lighting totally perfect, getting all of your corners totally clean, like removing all the wires that are visible in a photo, turning the TV. So it's just a lot of like presentation stuff, a lot of preparation work for each photo. It's almost like a piece of art. And so it usually takes, for me, I definitely don't take quite as long. It'll take me about 4 to 6 hours to shoot a medium-sized house. And closer to 4 hours to shoot an apartment. But yeah, so it's good. So it takes me a while to get the photos, get the planning. And then the majority of the time I spend is in Photoshop and Adobe Bridge. Yeah, so I like for all of my professional shoots, I'll shoot a bracketed image. So I'll shoot from a very like low light to a very high light, so I can get all my shadows and highlights nicely blended together. So that's a super time consuming process, just merging photo files together. But I mean, the result is totally worth it. I mean, it's time consuming but rewarding. And then with the portraiture stuff, with high school or couples or events or like wedding type stuff, most of your time is just swimming through. I mean, I'll take 1,000 photos of an event and I'll pick 25. So a lot of my time is just going through and going no, yes, no, yes, no. And then going back and editing and then touching after that. So I'd say probably 70% of my time is in the editing and after stuff. I'm also not that great at it. I learned, I learned all of my photo editing at the same time as I was learning photography. Yeah, so I didn't have any previous experience with photo editing softwares. So that was a really steep learning curve for me, actually.
Yeah, I would expect, man. That's like, especially with like Photoshop and that, you look at certain programs, especially when I was starting with music and looking at Ableton and being like, which is my music program, looking at it at first, you're just like, holy shit, what the fuck? Like, what is any of this? How do I do anything?
It feels like you're climbing a mountain. I mean, it's a ton. But yeah, so that, I mean, it's a good process. And then I usually just send all of my photos over a file sharing service called Dropbox. And then, of course, I'll send an invoice of how much they owe me and, for what dates. So, like, when I started out, I was doing a lot of, like, in person, like, through friends and through previous connections. So there are a lot less official, jobs. Like, I was getting paid for them and I was billing. But originally I didn't have, a client to business contract. Like, I didn't have a contract disclosing that I own all the copyright to my photos. I just am granting them, unlimited access for marketing or sales. So there's a lot of like contractual and legal stuff that I had to, kind of catch up on, registering as a business, getting a website up, all of that type of stuff takes a lot of hours as well, especially like the website side and business cards, and logos. I mean, it's a ton. Like, it's definitely a lot of work. And you gotta eat it all yourself. But it's I like to compare it to the analogy. It's like, how do you eat an elephant? It's like, well,
I have no idea.
You'd probably want to try
days.
one bite. Yeah, one bite at a time, right?
Yeah, over days.
Yeah, and you don't just try to eat a big chunk at once. You kind of expect yourself to go slow and get full. So you kind of take your time, you pace yourself, and you just go one bite at a time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a stressful thing too, because you'll definitely, like, a lot of the time I feel like I'm falling behind where I need to update my website, or I need to come up with a new ad, or I need to redesign my business card. And a lot of the time I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
It's like you just got so much other shit going on. But I mean, it's really rewarding. I cannot understate, like, being your own boss is fantastic. Being able to shift your schedule, like, I mean, like when I have, family stuff come up, or when I have serious plans arise in my life, I can actually make the time for it. And it's not a fight, I don't have to go tell someone, I don't have to let them know 2 months in advance that I'm doing anything. I just have to make sure it doesn't conflict with any previously arranged or agreed upon meetings.
Yeah.
And so and I guess that really ties into, like, I've become an absolute master of my own schedule, which is something, like, I had no control over my schedule in high school.
Yeah.
But as I've kind of, branched out into my own business, it's sink or swim. So I really had to write shit down and remember different dates and commitments. Otherwise I would have lost clients. I would have lost business. And I think that's a big thing, especially, like, just keeping a reputation, like, for being tenacious, for being active, for taking on new opportunities. I think that's a big part of it, is just maintaining and continuing to build your reputation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I just want to say again, thank you so much for coming on. If you want any links in the description to your website or anything else, any Instagram, whatever it might be, I'll put that in the description so y'all can see. He's an amazing photographer. I just can't thank you enough for coming on. That was awesome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. That was a really good conversation.
Yeah, that was awesome. Hopefully this will be all up tomorrow. I just have to work on editing and shit like that. But thank you everybody so much for watching. Tune in for the next podcast, probably coming next week. And thank you all again. Have a wonderful day.